Okay, we'll start now. See, this is our fifth lecture in the series. Last 2 weeks we could not take because most of the students were engaged in prelims. Now in this session, what we are going to do is, first we will take up the questions which we gave in last session, for which we will try to give model answers. So we gave 2 theoretical questions and 2 case studies. So model answers to those will be given. Now, that is first we are going to do. Second, we will take up third chapter of ethics paper, that is aptitude. So briefly, we'll try to understand what is aptitude and what are foundational values for a civil servant, and those things we'll try to understand. And then we will, because various ethical theories we are taking up, so about 8 ethical theories we have already, 8 to 10 ethical theories we have already discussed in earlier sessions. So 2 ethical theories again we are going to discuss today. And then subsequently in the end, we will again give 2 theoretical questions and 2 case studies, which we will take up for discussion and model answer in next session. So this is schedule of our class today. But before I start, I just want to tell you, those students who have already given this year's exam and are going to give mains 2025 exam, for them we are starting this test series. Already some of you have already joined. If anybody is left over and wants to join, he can join immediately. From 6th of this month, we are going to start. We'll have introductory class, and then 7th and 8th, we will have test series. Philosophy and ethics, both I'm taking up. So that's what we are going to do. So I just wanted to inform you, because already I have posted in groups 2-3 times. So that also you can think of joining if you are interested. Some students are asking me regarding PDF notes, etc. Because on YouTube channel, I'm daily one question or case study I am posting along with model answer. They're asking for PDF notes and YouTube comments. I just want to tell you, whatever Zoom classes I'm taking, next day we'll put the PDF notes pertaining to that. And in test series also, we are going to do that, because in test series, after conduct of test, we will evaluate the answer sheets and we will give the model answers. So that also will be PDF notes. In test series, one more thing I'm going to give you is the checklist for a student as well as examiner also. What all examiners wants to see in a good answer. Accordingly, students have to uh, include those points or include those issues, or deal those answers in that way, so that they can score better marks. That is what I'm going to give. So this, I just want to inform you. Now, let us start with the model answer for last Zoom session questions. See, as I told, 2 theoretical questions and 2 case studies were given last session. Now, as you know, theoretical questions have to be answered in about 150 words, and case studies in about 250 words. So this is the standard norm for the UPSC exam. So now let us see what was the question given and what can be the answer pertaining to this. See, the first question is, how do attitudes influence ethical behavior in public administration? Explain with examples. So now this question is a straight question. Uh, how attitude influence ethical behavior in public administration? First, we have to briefly try to explain, and then we have to give some examples. In this process, we'll have to also give some ethical theories, some thinkers' names, etc., and we'll try to quote that. Some documents also which pertain to uh, uh, ethical attitude in the administration, that also will try to quote. So now let us see what can be the model answer. Now, attitudes shape how a public servant perceives, interprets, and responds to situations, forming the link between internal value system and external conduct. So this is the critical point here, that because of attitude, uh, what internal value system you are having, that is reflected in your external conduct. And that is very, very critical for any civil servant dealing in public administration. So if you see, the attitude leads to thought, thought leads to behavior. So this is how this whole psychology works actually. Uh, so positive attitudes toward equity and transparency and service orientation results in ethical administration. So basically, there are, see, one is legal administration, another is ethical administration. Now, what is ideal administration? Ideal administration is which should be legal also and ethical also. So basically, legal administration, when moderated by compassion, empathy, and equity, etc., it becomes ethical administration. And that is what is required from a civil servant. Now, some examples also let us see. Now, TN Session example has been quoted here. Held strong attitudes against electoral malpractices, which translated into strict enforcement and electoral reforms. Because after, I don't know how many of you are aware, before TN Session, what was the election scenario, and after what was the election scenario, it's totally different. So that also uh, uh, is very important. Now, another example, or before example, or thinkers, as I told, some ethical thinkers, and there are also psychologists also in some questions, psychologist will be relevant. So same thing needs to be quoted. So here also Leon Fistinger's theory of cognitive dissonance. He's again important psychologist who has given this theory of cognitive dissonance, which is being explained. I mean, you see, explains that when actions conflict with personal ethics, psychological discomfort arises. This is his theory of cognitive dissonance, Leon Festinger. When actions conflict with personal ethics, psychological discomfort arises. To reduce this, individuals either change the behavior or rationalize it. So, I mean, if your actions are conflicting with personal ethics, two of the options you can choose. Either you will change your behavior or you will rationalize it. So this is what happens. Now, example is also given. A bureaucrat who accepts bribes might justify it as everyone does it, an ego defensive rationalization. So this is Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance. So, I mean, what is being said here is, if your attitude is ethical, you will not agree with whatever is going on, and you will try to change that system, or at least be away from that system. But if your attitude is not ethical, then you will rationalize it, and you will also become one of the party to that. Now, attitude behavior consistency. Now, this is again derived from cognitive dissonance only. So if attitude behavior consistency improves when the attitude is, as I told earlier, when attitude is morally intensive or ethically intensive. So morally intensive or personally relevant and reinforced by ethics training. So, I mean, all the three reasons put together basically. So, for example, morally intensive attitude is there. You will oppose custodial deaths. You will oppose custodial torture. If it is personally relevant, for example, corruption affecting personal integrity, you will oppose corruption. And this will be reinforced by ethics training, such as which may be imparted in Labasana and other training academies also. Hence, ethical behavior in governance is sustained when attitudes are value-driven, self-aware, and aligned with constitutional duties. I keep on telling to all the students, in your answer, you have to use a few ethical terms and phrases. For that, you should maintain a notebook, either physical or digital, along with words and phrases for different chapters, for different topics, which you should remember, we should understand, remember, and use also as and when required in the actual answer writing in your practice also, as well as in exam also. Now, this is first question. Now, let us see what is the second question which was given. Distinguish between moral and political attitudes. Why is neutrality in political attitude crucial for public servants? So, this is the question. Now, this again we'll try to answer in about 150 words. Moral attitudes are deeply held judgments. So, first, basically, what is more? I mean, we have to distinguish between moral and political attitude. So, first, we'll have to explain what is moral attitude, and then what is political attitude, and then how these two are different. And then, second part of the question is why is neutrality very critical as far as political attitude is concerned? So basically, there are two parts in the question, as you can see. So that's what we have to explain accordingly. So because questions, direction or dissection of question is also very, very important. So please understand in every exam, I mean, not only GS4 ethics, but first you have to read questions very, very carefully. What is asked, only that thing only you need to write. It's not that whatever you know you write, then you are not going to get the mark. So your direction of your answer has to be strictly as per the questions, wordings of the question. So this is very, very critical for obtaining good marks. So moral attitudes are deeply held judgments about right and wrong. This is the definition of moral attitude, shaped by conscience, ethical reasoning, and sometimes religion and culture. So this is moral attitude. Now we are quoting Gandhi here. Gandhi emphasized that moral attitude must stem from truth, non-violence, and love. So this is Gandhian philosophy or Gandhian theory of which he has very strongly promoted. In contrast, political attitudes are formed through socialization. Now, this is another ethical thinker. We are quoting David Easton. So, political attitudes are formed through socialization and shaped by ideologies, media, education, and family. So, for political opinion or political attitude, a lot of ingredients are there, as you can see. Ideologies, media, education, family, uh, then friends. I mean, so many things you can add on. So that shapes political attitude. So while moral attitude serves as an internal compass, political attitude must be strictly regulated in public services. As Patel, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, another important political leader, particularly with respect to civil services, we are quoting, the architect of Indian civil service, envisioned administrators must be apolitical, executors of law and policy. This is the view of Sardar Patel. Now we'll give example. For example, one example has been given. You can give other examples also. For example, a civil servant who personally supports conservative ideas, because definitely some of us or some of the civil servants definitely have the conservative ideas, must still uphold progressive legislation like Transgender Persons Protection Act as mandated by Constitution. So, because this is the law of the land, even if you don't agree with that personally, politically you may not be very supportive of that, but you have to agree. Right to education may be there, or right to livelihood, with anything. Reservations may be there. So all those things, maybe personally you don't agree with that idea, but that doesn't mean that you are not going to support that or wholeheartedly implement that. So a civil servant who personally supports conservative ideas must still uphold the legislations which are passed by state government or central government or whichever government they are working in. Now, in a democratic setup, political neutrality ensures non-partisan delivery of services, strengthens public trust, and upholds the constitutional values of equality and justice. So this completes our second question. Now let us see case study. Now, first case study is you are Director General of a police in a state where deep fake videos targeting women politicians and activists are spreading during elections. Investigations reveal that several popular influencers are involved. Banning their accounts would invite huge media criticism of censorship, but inaction could erode public trust and women's safety. How will you balance freedom of expression with ethical governance? Now, this is the question. So, this case study, actually, last class only we gave. So, most of you might have already uh, applied your mind and understood what can be the probable answer and how to proceed that. Now, let us understand that what are the ethical dilemmas involved? Because what we have to usually do in the answering is first 1 or 2 lines here. I have not written, but 1 or 2 lines introduction also you can write. And thereafter, you have to explain ethical dilemmas, stakeholders, then options chosen, and then how those options you are going to support with various ethical theories, etc. So now what is ethical dilemma here? First is freedom of expression versus protection of dignity, safety and democratic integrity. This is the dilemma. And as Kidder, you may be knowing Kidder's dilemma paradigm, that the problem or ethical problem is not right versus wrong, but it's right versus right. So here both are competing values. So both are actually right, but you have to then select which is more right, basically. I mean, that should be the view. Now, second ethical dilemma, avoiding media backlash or upholding rule of law and ethical governance. Now, who are the stakeholders in this whole process? Let us see. First thing, women politicians themselves and activists, because activists are agitating for them. They are victims of online abuse. So this is first stakeholder. Then influencers and content creators. They are claiming that they have right to express and their right cannot be suppressed. Of course, they cannot do illegal things, but then some influencers might have done wrong, but then others are claiming that right to expression they have. Then general public right to authentic information. This is again, and they are another stakeholders. Then institutions ensuring free and fair elections. Yeah, this is again Election Commission of India, or right down the line up to village level, they have Election Commission of India has various officers who are functioning for elections, free and conducting free and fair elections. So now what should we approach to resolve this issue or resolve this problem? So now let us understand that. First is evidence-based action should be there. So initiate prompt lawful action against individuals creating or sharing deepfakes under IT Act and IPC section. Now, here it's wrongly written. Actually, IPC is not in force as on today. So now there is Bharati Nyaya Sanghita. So relevant sections of Bharati Nyaya Sanghita we have to. So BNS basically. So that has to be replaced by IPC. So that BNS sections, under this BNS sections, criminal case can be filed. So one is IT sections and then BNS sections, ensuring due process and documentation. But then we should also ensure that it should be evidence-based. And for that, there has to be proper documentation. So that we should ensure, because then only conviction can be there, then only charge sheet can be filed in criminal cases, then only action can be taken by courts. So that is very, very important. Then second point is targeted intervention. Impose restrictions selectively against accounts proven to disseminate harmful content. Avoid blanket censorship. Action must be proportionate, accountable, and reviewable. So this is again very, very important. There is a doctrine of proportionality. You should know there is for any punishment, giving punishment, there is a doctrine of proportionality, which means that punishment given to any crime or any illegality should be in proportion to the offense committed. It cannot be more. So accordingly, so you cannot have a blanket censorship. You have to identify who has done wrong and selectively take action against those. So this is targeted intervention or targeted action against the actual defaulters or actual culprits you have to take. Now, third is transparent public communication. Now, in any situation of crisis or in any situation for that matter, where you are taking action, where one party is supporting, other party is demanding, the transparency is extremely important, because you have to tell the public that this is the truth and this is what we are going to take action like this. So transparent public communication, maybe through press conferences, through press notes, through social media, or through various other mechanisms you can ensure. Issue clear statements emphasizing the actions target malicious misuse of technology, not legitimate political speech, uphold the narrative of protecting democratic integrity and vulnerable groups. So this is what we have to do while disseminating the communication in a transparent manner. Now, you have to also collaborate with various social media platforms, partner with social media companies for rapid identification, and usually in such situation, in criminal cases and etc., they cooperate with the authorities, state authorities. So I have also experienced, because I have also conducted election as CEO, so I know uh, whichever social media you will request, they keep on cooperating, and they so collaboration with platform, partnered with social media companies for rapid identification, flagging and removal of defect content, while preserving spaces for lawful dissent and criticism. So they immediately take action for removing the objectionable content, and also identifying the persons or the accounts from which these contents have been uploaded. Then you have to also propose institutional safeguards. Establish independent oversight mechanisms. For example, judicial review panels can be established for actions involving influential accounts to avoid perceptions of arbitrariness. So this is all again very important. You should not appear arbitrary in your action. So for that, there has to be some independent judicial oversight also. So maybe some judicial committee can be formed to examine whole thing and recommend appropriate action. So that also is one suggestion. Now, this course of action, what are the various principles? Because once you have identified the course of action, then what are various ethical principles which support this? That also we should understand. So first is Mill's harm principle. See, Mill was a great advocate of the freedom, liberty. But then he gave a harm principle. He says that freedom ends where harm begins. So my freedom ends where your harm begins, basically. So my freedom is till the time my freedom is not harming you or others, basically. So that is harm principle. So freedom ends where harm begins. So this is first ethical principle, which is important here. So freedom of press or freedom of expression ends where it is harming to some unnecessary creating problem, legal problem, or maligning the character of some politicians and other things. So all those things can be quoted here. Now, second is Rawls' theory of justice. Priority must be given to protecting the dignity of vulnerable. So this is Rawls' theory of justice. Difference principle of Rawls, you know, Rawls have given difference principle, that there can be difference treatment, a difference in treatment in different groups if the protection or welfare of vulnerable can be done by that. So that's what again we can quote. Then third is deontological ethics of Immanuel Kant. Now, deontological ethics is duty-based ethics, basically. So upholding the duty to the Constitution, irrespective of popular opinion. So this is again Kant's deontological ethics supports this. And then above that, there is a constitutional mandate also. Now, constitutional mandate, Article 21, guarantees the right to dignity. So Article 21, as you know, most of you might be knowing, right to life and liberty. But Supreme Court has interpreted that life doesn't mean without dignity. So life means life with dignity, basically. So Article 21 guarantees the right to dignity. And Article 19.2, 19.1 is various kind of freedoms, which has been quoted, narrated in Article 19.1. 19.2 are various restrictions which can be permitted. So 19.2 permits reasonable restrictions to prevent public disorder and protect others' rights. So constitutional mandate also supports this kind of action. So finally, we can conclude ethical governance demands safeguarding democratic freedoms while decisively curbing digital harms. Balancing liberty with responsibility ensures both social trust and institutional legitimacy. Now, this is first case study. Now, let us see what is the second case study which was given. This is case study 2. You are a health secretary managing a severe vaccine shortage during an outbreak. Influential political leaders are pressuring you to reserve vaccines for their constituencies, while rural and tribal areas are more vulnerable. How will you allocate the limited resource ethically? And these kind of problems do come throughout the career of any civil servant, because there will be continuously have to interact with political leaders, maybe MLA, maybe MP, maybe minister or anybody. And these kind of demands are also very common actually. First, you serve their areas, first you give to their people rather than, I mean, not only vaccine, any other benefit also. So now how will you prioritize the whole thing? How will you allocate the limited resources or limited vaccine in this scenario? This is the question. So now let us see what is the ethical dilemma here. First is political pressure versus ethical resource allocation. Second is loyalty to political masters or duty to vulnerable populations and constitutional values. So this is again important, because if you don't listen to political leaders, maybe your career may be at stake, maybe you will get other problem in their posting, transfers and other things. So all those things may follow. So that is again an issue here. Now, who are the stakeholders? Rural and tribal communities, definitely they are stakeholders, and there is a higher risk also. In the case study itself, it is being told there is higher risk and they have limited access also, because they are very vulnerable groups. They don't have that much voice also. Then second is urban populations and political constituencies. They are also a stakeholder, because they also require that for their own safety and safeguard. Now, third is government institutions and public health credibility. Yes, government institutions and public health department, they also should have some credibility. So that is also at stake here. Now, future pandemic response mechanisms. Yes, that is again another thing. Then my personal and institutional ethical responsibility as an officer, your personal responsibility and the institution to which you belong, that also is at stake here. So all these are at stake. Now, what should be the approach for ethical action which can be taken? Again, we will say evidence-based prioritization. What does it mean? Resource must be allocated based strictly on vulnerability criteria, infection rates, fatality risk, and healthcare infrastructure, not political consideration. So basically, you should have data. Basically, your health department should have data pertaining to this. What is the infection rate, what is the fatality risk, and what is the health infrastructure available in those areas, and accordingly prioritization should be done. So once you have some evidence-based action, it's very difficult for anybody to question your action, and you can support it anywhere and everywhere. So this is first point. Now, second is transparency and public communication. Again, very important. You have to clearly articulate what action you are taking, under which scenario you are taking, and why you are taking, what data you have collected, and because of what you have taken this action, why. So all those things you need to tell to public. Because if public is well informed, if the whole thing is being done in a transparent manner, definitely it is going to protect your own personal credibility, and institutional credibility also is going to be restored. So clearly articulate and publish the criteria for vaccine allocation, and preempt allegations of bias, and maintain public trust. Frameworks such as WHO ethical guidelines for pandemic can be used for reference. So now, this is another thing which can be used to protect your decision, basically, or to support your decision. So that also can be done. Now, constructive political engagement. This is again important, because political leaders you cannot avoid. You have to engage them in a very constructive manner. So engage with political leaders respectfully, explaining that an evidence-based approach protects the most lives, strengthens national resilience, and ultimately benefits all constituencies. So basically, you have to respectfully engage with political leaders, and democracy demands also, because in a democracy, political leaders are quite important, very important. So you have to respectfully engage and explain the whole scenario. This is the scenario, and in this scenario, what action I am taking is the best possible action. So please support that action. And I can tell you, most of the political leaders will also support that, because they will also understand the constraints under which government is functioning. So this is engaging the political leaders along with evidences. Now, legal and constitutional compliances. Again, here also legal. So wherever in any case study, constitutional provisions are involved or legal provisions are involved, you have to quote that and get support for that, along with ethical theories. And that also, if some Supreme Court cases are involved, you have to also quote some Supreme Court cases also. In several case studies, I have also uh, accordingly demonstrated that how Supreme Court cases can be quoted on YouTube. Also, it is available, and some other case studies also, which every week I am giving. I'm saying the same thing. So action must align with Article 21, that is right to life, and Article 14, right to equality of the Constitution, reinforcing that access to life-saving vaccines cannot be politicized. So everybody is equal for that, and perhaps most vulnerable are the first stakeholders. So they should be given first. Contingency management. Now another important principle in any emergency or in any emergency situation or contingency situation, simultaneously advocate for urgent measures to boost vaccine production and optimize logistics to expand coverage in subsequent phases. So if in your area production is there, you can do for you can request for boosting the production. Otherwise, at least you can request for enhanced supply so that your all areas can be covered. And that also you can inform to that political leader or through press to the public also that you have already requested for additional vaccine. As soon as it comes, it will be used for vaccinating all other eligible persons also. Now, what are the ethical principles which justify this kind of action? Now, first is distributive justice, fair allocation based on needs. This is Rawls' theory of fairness. So John Rawls have told, he was a justice theory, he was promoter of justice theory, and theory of fairness is very, very key component for his justice theory. So this is supporting this action. Second is utilitarianism, maximize benefits by prioritizing those at highest risk. So this is again, greatest good for greatest number is being supported through utilitarianism of J.S. Mill and Bentham. So in fact, here it has not been written, but it's better if you quote these philosophers' names also while along with theories, because that will show additional input from your side. So please do quote names also who has promoted utilitarianism, J.S. Mill or Bentham. And then stewardship ethics, duty bound to manage public resources responsibly. This is again very important principle. Next is public trust. Ethical crisis management strengthens institutional credibility and ensures public cooperation in future health interventions. So you have to function as a basically trustee to, government power or civil servants power is a trust given to you. So you cannot breach the trust of the people, of the Constitution. So accordingly, you are basically following this action steps which you have been narrated. Now, in conclusion, let us see ethical leadership demands prioritizing vulnerability over political expediency. This is very important because political pressures will always be there, but then vulnerability has to be prioritized over political demands or political expediency. In public service, especially during crisis, upholding fairness, transparency, and constitutional morality is non-negotiable. So this again, so this completes the second case study. Now, we'll directly go to the chapter of aptitude, which I am telling, because that let us understand in brief, because I will not dwell in very detail because of time constraint, but definitely all important points I will try to cover as far as the aptitude is concerned. And then finally, we will have two ethical theories and then questions for next Zoom conference we can discuss. So now aptitude and foundational values for civil service. So this is the third chapter. If you see the syllabus, this is third chapter of the syllabus. Now, see, here basically two things are there. First, aptitude, and then second is foundational values for civil services. Now we will have several subheadings and sub points in all discussion. So accordingly, we will proceed. So first, definitely we will discuss aptitude and what it means and how it affects the civil servant and how it can be cultivated and all those things. And then we'll go, what are the various foundational values for civil services and how important they are, how they impact the civil servant section and all those things now we are going to see. And we will be also quoting some documents, some thinkers, and also we'll be giving some examples also. So in brief we will be doing, but then in brief also it will be almost a complete kind of thing only. So now let us start. Now, aptitude in civil services is not limited to academic ability or procedural expertise. It reflects a civil servant's capacity to act with ethical clarity, emotional maturity, and social awareness in pursuit of constitutional ideals. So basically, this is aptitude. This is different from attitude. So that also we should understand, because attitude is second chapter. Now, aptitude we are dealing is third chapter of the course. Now, second Administrative Reforms Commission is a very important document. I mean, they have given a report which is very, very important for ethical administration. So, I mean, therefore, we keep on quoting that, because that is very, very important document. And then several questions, several answers you will have to quote, or several case studies also. This is very important. That also emphasizes that governance must rest on a strong ethical foundation rooted in personal integrity of public officials. In a complex multicultural society like India, values such as integrity, impartiality, objectivity, empathy, dedication to public service, and compassion are not optional but operational imperatives. So these are basically, if you see, this is aptitude, and these are foundational values. So in introduction itself, we are telling these are foundational values for civil services: integrity, impartiality, objectivity, empathy, dedication to public service, and compassion. These are very, very important for any civil servant. Now, let us see what is aptitude, meaning and its dimension. Let us try to understand that after this introduction. Aptitude is the potential or capacity of an individual to perform a task effectively. So this is aptitude. In the civil services, it involves developing right ethical, emotional, analytical, and social competencies for responsible administration. So this is basically aptitude. Now, what are its key dimensions? Let us understand that. What are the key components of aptitude? First is analytical ability. So if analytical ability is there, that means aptitude is there, or correct aptitude is there. So analytical ability includes logical reasoning and structured decision making. For example, evaluating public, because examples also, as I told, we will keep on giving. So for example, evaluating public policy using cost benefit and stakeholder analysis is analytical ability. Evaluating which program, let us say, has done welfare of poor people in better manner is analytical ability. So this is one of the important components of aptitude. Second is moral judgment. Moral judgment is making decisions based on ethical reasoning. Now, this is supported by Kohlberg's stages of moral judgment. Kohlberg, again, was an important psychologist, and he has given this stages of moral development theory. Now, this theory outlines progression from self-interest to principled conscience. So basically, what Kohlberg said, and see, what is moral development? That from self-interest you go to principled conscience, or ethical work, or ethical service, or social service, or working for the public welfare. So this is the moral development. So your self-interest will go down, and your principal conscience will come up, which will ensure that you work in public welfare, you work in an ethical manner, and you work as a ethical civil servant. Now, another component of aptitude is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence was advocated by another psychologist, Daniel Goleman. Now, he has given 5 components of this emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills. So these are basically 5 components as per Daniel Goleman, important components used in resolving conflicts, managing field level tensions, or coordinating diverse teams. So this is one important component of aptitude. Another component of aptitude is service orientation and resilience. Now, service orientation means deep commitment to citizen welfare. Of course, if you are service oriented, you will be having deep commitment, and particularly you will take welfare measures, or implement welfare measures more effectively, ensuring that really poor get the service from the government. Second is resilience, capacity to persist in challenging environments, natural disasters, conflict zones, or uh, epidemics. So such kind of challenging environments, you will take correct decisions. You will persist in that, in still continuing with your principled actions, ethical actions, your welfare measures, and all those things will. Now, so these are main four contents for aptitudes. Now, after aptitude, now let us see foundational values for civil services. In introduction, already those values have been listed. Now, one by one, we will take up those values in a little more detail and try to understand what does it mean, along with some examples also. Now, these values serve as a moral compass of administration, enabling officials to act with fairness, integrity, and compassion. Now, first is integrity. Now, what is integrity? Consistency between principled words and actions, doing the right thing even when it is inconvenient or unrewarded. So, what is basically integrity? Doing right thing even when nobody is watching, even you are not being monitored by anybody, even it is inconvenient for you or rewarding for you. So that is called integrity. So integrity is doing right thing in almost all situations. Now, for example, prevents corruption and arbitrary decision making. This is one component of integrity. Then virtue stems from, so Socrates has said, this is Socratic ethics. Socrates has told, virtue stems from moral knowledge. So it's not, virtue is not due to fear of somebody. Virtue is not due to disciplinary action. This comes from within with moral knowledge. Now, again, C.S. Lewis's statement, which I have already told, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So this is important statement, and it can be quoted also at different places. So this is, and this sometimes it is asked to elaborate also. So I mean, as a question also it can be asked. So that also we should remember that this is said by C.S. Lewis. Now, another important value is impartiality and non-partisanship. Now, impartiality, as you know, means equal treatment for all citizens. So equality for everybody. You have to be fair, basically. So equal treatment for all citizens, regardless of any background. Then second is non-partisanship, professional neutrality, loyalty to the constitution, not to political entities. So this is again second important value. Now, some references, if you can see, Sardar Patel advocated for a neutral and fearless civil service. Similarly, Max Weber, who has written a lot on literature on bureaucracy, he emphasized impersonality and detachment as hallmarks of modern efficient bureaucracy. This is from Max Weber. Another third foundational value is objectivity. What is objectivity? Taking decisions based solely on facts, law, and merit, free from personal bias or emotional influence. So this is objectivity. Now, objectivity, again, we quote another political thinker, A.V. Dicey. He has given the concept of rule of law and elaborated a lot that law must guide administrative action, not discretion. That is A.V. Dicey's concept of rule of law. It ensures objectivity, ensures transparency and public confidence in decisions. Another foundational value for a civil servant is dedication to public service. Dedication to public service means selfless commitment to public welfare, even under hardship. So this is selfless commitment. I may not get anything in benefit. My interest may not be served, but still I will be committed to public service, public welfare. So this is dedication to public service. Now, this is inspired by Gandhi's Sarvodaya and Antyodaya, upliftment of all, and particularly weakest of the weak or poorest of the poor. And again, another thinker, Paul Appleby, has said, public administration is inherently ethical and should prioritize service over power. Then another important foundational value is empathy, very, very important. Empathy, emotional capacity to understand and internalize the experiences of others, especially vulnerable groups. If you are able to understand the problems of vulnerable groups or experiences what problems they are facing, how they are experiencing the whole thing, you will be able to definitely solve the problem. So this is empathy basically. Now, this is a core component of emotional intelligence also, as narrated by Daniel Goleman, which we have already seen, emotional intelligence. So this is very important. Then Neil Noddings, another ethical thinker. He ethics of care. Ethical responsibility is rooted in relationships and contextual understanding. Another important foundational value, tolerance and compassion towards weaker sections. Tolerance, respecting diverse beliefs, identities, and expression. This is tolerance, very simple. Now, compassion means proactive care for the disadvantaged, going beyond legal obligation. This is compassion. Now, what are the various constitutional mandates? Let us see that. Article 15.4 permits affirmative action. Article 46 directs the state to promote interests of SC, ST, and weaker sections. And then another is John Rawls' difference principle, that social inequalities are acceptable only if they benefit the least advantage. So John Rawls' difference principle, that different groups in society can be treated differently if they benefit least advantage. So this is again another ethical principle which supports compassion. Now, let us see. All these values are interconnected also. It's not that these values are separate. In a big way, they are interconnected. For example, integrity. Now, integrity ensures impartial, lawful, and consistent decision making. Similarly, objectivity prevents arbitrary action, enables fairness and legitimacy. So basically, if you see, integrity and objectivity are interrelated. Now, similarly, empathy humanizes governance and deepens citizen trust. Dedication sustains effort in difficult, high responsibility situations. Now, let us say a scenario, one example in a disaster relief. What will happen? Integrity prevents favoritism in aid distribution. This is the role of integrity. Objectivity ensures fair assessment of losses. Empathy and compassion guides sensitive rehabilitation. Dedication ensures timely service even under adversity. So suppose this is disaster relief, one example, how these values will activate in a civil servant to do some good. So this is what an example, an illustrative example has been given. Now, what are the various challenges also? It's not easy. There are various challenges also for these values, because it's not very easy for any civil servant to practice these values. Now, first is political pressure. This is a very important challenge. This threatens neutrality and service integrity, because usually political pressure will be to support their own groups or support their own caste or support their own area, and they will always keep on putting pressure. So now for that, already one case study also we have seen. Accordingly, we have to deal with them with facts, figures, various legal provisions, various ethical provisions, all those things we need to, basically convince them. So, but political pressure is one danger or one challenge for practice of these values. Now, another is corruption and favoritism. If some civil servant is corrupt, definitely he will not be able to do. Or if favoritism is there to support our own people, definitely then it will hold citizen trust and public morale will be weakened. Then rigid procedures also sometimes impede empathetic response or innovative action, because that happens in governments sometimes, because very rigid rules will be there or very rigid procedures will be there, which if you violate, you will be in problem. If you don't violate, you will not be able to do good to vulnerable groups. So that kind of problem may come. Then cultural and institutional apathy undermines tolerance and institutional governance, inclusive governance. So this is again another problem. So these are 4 or 5 basically problems which makes a civil servant not to practice or not to adhere to these foundational values. Now, what is the in concluding remarks? Let us see what we'll see. Ethical leadership in public service. Aptitude and foundational values form the ethical infrastructure of civil service. in upholding constitutional ideals, civil servants must not only enforce rules but embody rules. If you want to shine, now another quote of APJ Abdul Kalam, this is very important, good quote. I mean, this we can use in other answers also. If you want to shine like sun, first burn like sun. It's very important. A very important ethically loaded quote, which you can write in your notebook, and as and when required, you have to quote. If you want to shine like sun, first burn like sun. An ethically committed civil servant combines Kant's deontological duty, Raoult's fairness, Gandhi's compassion, and Weber's neutrality. Such civil servant becomes a trustee of the constitution and a moral leader of the nation. So this is what, again, another important concluding remark or concluding line, which can be used at other places also, and is very useful. Now, we have two ethical theories which we will discuss today. So now let us see what are those theories. Because about, I think, 10 theories have already discussed in previous sessions. So these are two. And then next session, we will take another some case-based theories or content-based theories or context-based theories we will be taking next week or next class. So now let us see what is the theory which we want to discuss today. First is contractualism. Now, what is the core idea of this contractualism? Morality and ethical governance arise from mutual agreements between individuals and state for peaceful coexistence. So this is the thrust of this theory: mutual agreement between individual and state for peaceful coexistence and social cooperation. So this is the thrust. Now, what is the, so basically contractualism is social contract theory. Most of you, I mean, if you have read Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, you may be knowing. Some of you might have already gone, maybe student of political science, so you will know it. So contractualism or social contract theory is given by Hobbes and then continued by Locke and Rousseau. So same thing we are discussing here. So contractualism is a normative ethical theory that views morality as based on social contract, an implicit or explicit agreement among individuals to form a society and follow the rules that enable cooperative living. So this is what the social contract theory says, basically. It provides a moral foundation for laws, institutions, and public duties. Now, key thinkers, as I've already told, first is Thomas Hobbes. His idea is people surrender certain freedoms to a sovereign authority in exchange for security and order. Leviathan. Leviathan is the sovereign authority for Hobbes, basically. Then another philosopher or political thinker, John Locke, individuals enter into contract to protect their natural rights. This is what Locke has told. Life, liberty, and property, according to him, is natural right, and this needs to be preserved. Then Rousseau, another thinker, advocated the general will. Laws must reflect the collective moral will of the people. Then another modern contractualist, T.M. Scanlon, actions are morally right if they can be justified to others based on principles no one can reasonably reject. So now, basically, mutual agreement here is the core or basic thing. People are agreeing with each other to follow some rules or laws or some, even surrender some rights, etc. So all these things, basically, mutually one has to agree. So basically, morality is justified by mutual agreement. This is the core principle here. A morally right action is one that free, rational individuals would agree upon under fair conditions for mutual benefit. Now, some examples also we'll try to give. A government introduces a strict environment regulation that limits industrial activity in a tribal region for long-term ecological protection. However, it affects livelihoods. So what is the contractualist perspective? Let us see what they will suggest in this case. The state must balance public interest, that is ecology, sustainability, with the rights and consent of local communities. Ethical decision-making should involve democratic consultation, ensuring the policy reflects the general will and does not disproportionately harm those not party to its formation. So basically, what they are saying, that state should ensure that there should be a dialogue between both the groups, parties, and they should come to an agreement. This is what we want to do. So, or they should come to agree a contract basically in mutual benefit. So that should be implemented. That's what they are saying here. Now, strengths of contractualism. It promotes fairness, reciprocity, and consent in governance. Now, it offers a moral foundation of public institutions and civil duties. It encourages inclusive and collective decision making and aligns with democratic constitutionalism and rule of law. Why? Because stakeholders themselves, they discuss with each other and arrive at some conclusion. But it has some negative points also. What are those negative points? Criticism will see. It idealizes rationality. This is a very wrong assumption. Basically, it assumes that all individuals have equal bargaining power. That is not there. For example, earlier example, on the one hand, tribals are there, another some capitalist who is establishing a factory is there. Both do not have same bargaining power. So the negotiation between both will not be a very ideal or incorrect situation. So same thing is said here. It assumes that all individuals are equally rational and capable of participating in the contract, which may ignore social and economic inequalities. So this is a very dangerous theory in that sense. Now, it also abstracts hypothetical. Critics argue that contract is not always explicit or practically existent. This is again another negative point. Then exclusion of risk is another negative point. Marginalized communities may be underrepresented in real life contract formulations. So basically, if you see, this and these points are in a way supporting each other. So therefore, this theory is not very ideal theory in all scenarios, but yes, if two parties have equal strength or equal bargaining power, then perhaps they can sit together and in mutual interest, they can agree upon something, and that should be uh, basically implemented by government. So that I think can be done. But then if the parties themselves which are discussing or negotiating or going for mutual consent are unequal, definitely there, I mean, it will not be the contract which will be arrived at will not be fair. This is the problem. Now, how it compares with other ethical theories. Now, let us see that also briefly. Uh, Utilitarianism, maximizing the total good, greatest good of greatest number. So this is ethical theory. Now, core focus is maximizing total good. Now, contrast with contractualism may override individual rights for majority benefits. So this is the uh, contrast with contractualist theory. Deontology of Kant, duty and universal rules they follow. Now again, contractualism bases duty on mutual agreement, which always deontology may not agree. Because deontology says, I will do right whatsoever may happen. So whatever is my duty, that's all. Then rights-based ethics, another theory. Now they say that inviolable moral entitlements are there which should be followed. Now contractualism says justifies rights through social consensus only. Then again, another theory, virtue ethics of Aristotle, they emphasize on moral character. Now, this theory, contractualism, emphasizes on external agreement, not personal traits. So, there is a lot of difference between these two. So, this is how these four important theories compare with contractualism. Now, in conclusion, contractualism provides a robust moral framework for public ethics by grounding duties, laws, and policies in principle of mutual consent and fairness. But I again want to tell you that mutual consent and fairness is important only when the participating entities or parties have equal strength, have equal bargaining power. Yes, then this theory is one of the best theories for implementation of the contract arrived at. Now I will see another theory, that is rights-based theory. This also we'll discuss. Now, rights-based theory, this focuses on the rights basically. And there are certain rights which are natural rights. It cannot be compromised, to be upheld by state at any cost. That's what this theory is. So, core focus is ethical decision-making must be rooted in the protection of individual rights, human dignity, and legal entitlements. So, this is the core content or concept of this theory. Now, what are the rights-based ethical theories? Let us understand that also, because there are several theories promoted by several thinkers. Of course, I mean, in content, they are more or less same, but yes, the different way they have promoted with different names. So, rights-based theories emphasizes fundamental rights are inherent to all individuals by virtue of human being, must be respected regardless of consequences or majority opinion. These rights act as moral constraints on individual and institutional behavior. Now, they are central to constitutional morality, human rights discourse, and ethical public administration. Now, what are its philosophical foundation? Let us see that. First is natural rights theory. Now, this was advocated by John Locke. Now, in social contract theory also, his theory is there, and same is here also rights, because there also he has emphasized on rights to life, liberty, and property. So that was Locke's theory there also, as pre-political inalienable rights that the state must protect. That's what was Locke told. Then he laid the groundwork for liberal democracies, constitutional safeguards, and social contract theory. So basically, this rights-based theory is a liberal theory, supporting liberalism, liberty-oriented, or emphasizing on liberty. So that's what this thing. Then another philosopher, Ronald Dworkin, asserted that rights are trump cards, basically trumps. They override even utilitarian concerns when individual dignity is at stake. So basically what Dworkin is telling, that rights are more important than utility or consequences also. My rights should be protected, that's all. That's what he emphasized moral reasoning through legal interpretation, especially in upholding civil liberties. Another thinker, Amartya Sen, advocated capability approach. Now, Amar Sen actually also comes in justice-based theories, because along with John Rawls, he also comes there, but in rights-based theories also he's referred. So therefore, I'm telling, advocated a capability approach. Rights must be translated into real freedoms, such as access to health, education, and political participation. So that was his theory. So rights are not just legal entitlements, but tools to enhance human development and dignified living. Now, what are the strengths of this rights-based theory? Let us try to understand, and what are the weaknesses of this theory. Now, first point is it anchors moral reasoning in justice and fairness. It upholds moral worth of every individual. For this, individuals are more important than anything else. It prevents instrumentalization of people or collective goals. It offers ethical limits on state power and majority rule. So this is again very important, because it says that individual rights, and basically just like fundamental rights of Indian Constitution, there is Article 32. One can go to Supreme Court also for enforcement. So this is just like that kind of thing. It cannot be compromised, even for utility, even for public welfare, even for. So my rights should be my right. It cannot be taken away in any circumstances. Now, what are its criticisms and ethical challenges? Let us see. It conflicts with collective good. So this is again important, because sometimes collective good is more important than personal right. Upholding rights may sometimes hinder efficiency or welfare of majority. For example, land acquisition versus tribal rights. Very important. Then rigid application, it's very rigid kind of thing. So overemphasis on individual rights may ignore contextual complexity and societal obligations. This is again an important point. Overemphasis on any ethical theory is dangerous, because one has to apply the ethical theories in context-based scenarios. And in a particular context, some theory may be applicable. In some other context, some other theory may be more appropriate. So universally, one theory cannot be applied. So this also we should understand. Then another is resource constraint. Transforming legal rights into real entitlements requires administrative capacity. So this is again important. Now, same thing, I mean, let us illustrate this whole thing in one or two case studies. First thing, a journalist publishes an expose that criticizes a government scheme. There is public outrage and pressure to censor. Now, what is rights-based approach will say? A right-based approach defends freedom of speech, even if the views are controversial, ensuring democratic accountability. So this is what right-based approach in this. Now, if you apply some other ethical theory, some other result will come. But this is right-based. This. Now, second case, let us see. A slum is being removed for a public infrastructure project. Rights-based ethics would demand adequate rehabilitation and consent, as the right to housing and dignity must not be compromised for development. So this is again an example how right-based theory will try to resolve this problem or this case. Now let us see comparison of this theory, rights-based theory, with other theory, just like we have seen the earlier theory also. So let us see this also. Now, utilitarianism, you know what they say, maximizing overall happiness or greatest good of greatest number. Now, rights-based theory will say, may sacrifice individual rights for collective gain. So, it's difficult. They will not agree for that. Because utilitarianism may sacrifice, so rights-based theory is not going to agree. Deontology, duty-based ethics aligns when duties involve protecting rights. So this is again important because yes, if duty protects rights, they will support to that extent, but beyond that, not. Virtue ethics emphasize on moral character. Now, rights-based theory ensure individuals have the freedom to cultivate virtue. So it's not that, but basically rights-based theory is individualistic theory, individual-based theory. Everything centers around individual. Pragmatic ethics, what works best in practice. This is pragmatic theory of William James. Now, what rights-based theory says, rights act as non-negotiable moral boundaries within the practical experimentation. So this is how rights-based theory differs from these four important ethical theories. Now, in conclusion, rights-based ethical theories provide a moral shield and support for individual that already we have discussed, because this is individualistic theory, individual-based theory. This promotes liberty. This says that individual is most important. I mean, even if public welfare is neglected, or even if social group welfare is neglected, individuals' rights are very, very important. So this is basically the conclusion. Now, this completes this rights-based theory also. Now, I will give the questions for next Zoom conference. So again, two questions, little more complicated questions I have taken, which we'll be answering next Zoom conference. Question number one is, empathy without competence is charity. Competence without empathy is cold efficiency. Discuss how a balance of empathy and professional capability is vital for public service delivery, especially for the marginalized. So this we will try to answer in 150 words. Question two, tolerance and compassion are not just personal virtues, but public obligations in civil services. Examine with reference to the role of a civil servant in handling communal violence, refugee crisis, or caste-based ethics. So these are the two theoretical questions we will be taking. I'm again repeating, these are little complex questions and good questions, exam standard questions. If you are able to answer these questions well, perhaps you are well prepared for the exam. Now, another two case studies we'll be taking like this. Case study one, you are Secretary, Ministry of Environment. A foreign MNC proposes a green energy project, that is solar fields, that will displace indigenous tribal groups from their secured lands. Approving the project supports climate goals but violates tribal rights and cultural heritage. How would you handle this situation? So this is one case study. Now, second case study is quite interesting. Let us see that. You are asked to handle an RTI request for a controversial subject. Key files have disappeared. How do you proceed? So this again we'll discuss. So these two case studies and the two theoretical questions we will discuss. Any candidate or any student wants me to evaluate, please send your answer on this mail ID. Try to evaluate. But I'm getting one or two PDF answers, but after I am giving the model answer, they are sending. Now, please understand, if you send me after giving my model answer, I will not be able to evaluate because I will be evaluating only before that. Once I have already given the model answer, you can compare with that and you can anyway uh, uh, evaluate your own answer sheet. So please understand that. So you have to send it if you want. Before I give you model answer, you should send it. And it should be in legible handwriting. One or two I have received. Now you are not able to read also what is there in that. So I don't know whether the scanner was not good or whether the handwriting is bad. Not at all clear, not legible. So my request will be, please write as if you are writing an exam with a stopwatch, with good practice after reading this, and try to write in legible handwriting. I can tell you, legible handwriting gets better marks, definitely. If your handwriting is good, you are going to fetch little better marks. then the person whose handwriting is not good. So you should practice for handwriting also is very important. So this is what I have to say. Now, uh, uh, this is from my side because now if you want to say anything, otherwise I will close. Okay, we will meet uh, next Zoom conference with the model answers for these questions and next chapters as per the course. Thank you everybody.